Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hey Justin, welcome to the stream, man. What's up on a Saturday afternoon for you? Hey Bob Kaler, welcome to the stream. Hey Daryl Dimer, welcome to the stream. If you guys are not aware, the format here is basically you guys ask questions and we discuss what I might potentially have to offer in those areas. So, as once again, I have no real axe to grind today. It's gotten harder and harder and harder for me to come up with content to actually fill this time. So, basically, I'm dependent on you guys to come up with questions or topics of discussion. I will dig into the 500 Ways to Be a Better Freshwater Fish Keeper book and get a tip at some point. Well, I'm glad you came back, Bob. Bob says he's starting his water changes as he follows. Water is basically the name that I chose for my channel. I mean, it's my name, but I call the channel Water because basically that's what we do as fish keepers. We take care of the water, and we feed, and we medicate, and the fish take care of themselves. You know, we have to once again quote Eric Bodrock, and I'm not sure where he got it from. Justin Shepard says, I've been trying to grow Indiana native plants underwater and had some luck and some not so good luck. That's one area, Justin, where I'm really weak, is plants. I have no idea what might grow submerged as opposed to immersed. Indiana native plants. Well, there's one good thing. We're both from Indiana.
Ask him what ones he's been successful with.
My wife wants to know which ones you've been successful with or had some luck with. My wife is a botanist and a master gardener, and she's been keeping plants for a long time in tanks, but she seems interested in what plants you've had luck with. A few mosses. Now, are those terrestrial mosses, or are those mosses that you already found growing underwater somewhere here in Indiana? Did you hear that, honey?
Yeah.
Mosses, he says. It looks a lot like Java moss. Might be hair algae.
What did he say?
A few mosses that looks a lot like Java moss right off my hillside.
All right, so that's that common moss. I can't remember the exact name of it, but is it the kind that like grows on tombstones and things like that?
I've got some of that stuff growing on one of my bio wheel thingies in there.
It's good to know that will grow underwater
Hey, Laura.
since water mosses are so hard to grow.
I've got some of that that's growing on my bio wheel in there, that little tufts
Yeah.
of that kind of moss.
Justin, what did you do to acclimate the moss to grow underwater?
He says he can't find any info on it. Yeah, the stuff all over everything.
Okay. Well,
It's just got to be some kind of normal terrestrial moss.
yeah, it's called common moss, but that's the the common name. I can't remember the Latin name for it. Have you ever tried Scotch moss, Justin?
I basically have to keep quiet when we're talking about plants because that's just something that I know very little about. As long as I've been keeping fish tanks and trying to grow plants. Hey Sharon, welcome to the stream. Hey Laura, welcome to the stream.
No, I haven't. I'll look into it. Yeah, Scotch moss, well, it basically grows in Ireland. I'm not sure why they call it Scotch moss. I think it probably grows there too, but I think it has the ability to grow in either environment, and it's really beautiful. I haven't tried it myself, but I will whenever I run across some at the nursery. They generally sell it this time of year, so that would be a good thing to try.
The only question, Justin, I would have about using stuff from outside is that it might carry pathogens. If it's near water, it might carry water insects that eat fish. There's quite a few water insects that eat fish, so I'd just keep an eye on it. Make sure you don't suddenly develop a big bug that's eating your fish.
One Indiana native that I that I know will acclimate to underwater is cardinal flower. It has tall spikes with red flowers on it. So that's one that you might want to try. I can look up the Latin name and give it to Dwayne here in a minute. Trying to think of any other Indiana natives that will grow underwater. I bet there are a lot of them that would. Anything that's basically a margin plant that grows like on creek beds and river, the edges of rivers and ponds and things, I think would transfer. But like Dwayne says, there may be pathogens, so you'd have to quarantine it for a while.
Yeah, that might be a real good idea, Justin. If you're bringing stuff in from inside, you can put it in a quarantine tank and see if you notice insects or bugs.
Oh, I just remembered the Latin name of cardinal flower. It's Lobelia cardinalis.
Lobelia cardinalis.
Yeah, Lobelia cardinalis. Gotta run.
So my wife is the one to speak to about plants, but the only thing that I have any luck growing is Christmas tree moss or peacock moss. You're welcome, Justin. Sorry I can't be more help. I went through a kick about 20 something years ago where I started wanting to grow sponges, freshwater sponges, and I did a lot of research. Well, Laura, my wife says she thinks it will go underwater too, submerged as opposed to immersed. Now, I don't know. I'm not specifically aware of anything that is negative about that plant because I don't know it at all. But there are some things that are sold as aquarium usable, like your money plant, lucky bamboo. Lucky bamboo, they sell it to you to grow underwater. And if you do that, it will start rotting, and the leaves are very poisonous. So it's very detrimental to fish to keep lucky bamboo as an underwater plant. You can allow it to dangle its roots in the water and it'll do just fine as long as you keep the dead leaves from falling in the tank. So that is one that I have had experience with. I finally ended up taking it out of my tank because I just could not keep the leaves from falling into the tank. I still have the plant. I stuck it in a cup full of water and it's in a window. But that's one plant that I know of that you can buy as an aquarium plant that is not an aquarium plant. And so in some instances, I think it might require more research for you to be able to figure out whether the plant leaves or the plant itself is dangerous. Laura says, I have Lobelia cardinalis wavy in my aquarium and it's beautiful. That's awesome. Well, obviously you've had a good deal of experience with it, so it's probably Bob says, I have kept freshwater for 55 years this spring. I had no idea that there are freshwater sponges. Always learning, thanks. Yeah, I got on a kick, Bob, where I decided that's what I was going to do with my 150-gallon tank that I had, that I wanted to set it up as a native sponge tank. And I did research on those things, and nobody seemed to have any luck keeping them alive in an aquarium. And there was one book that was available on freshwater sponges that was about $780. It was obviously a college textbook, and I just couldn't afford that money, and that pretty much knocked me out of the idea of keeping freshwater sponges. But if you'll go and look in local ditches, you will see them. They are little octagon shaped or little nut shaped, kind of brownish grayish masses that are maybe a little larger than a 50-cent piece. And you'll find them all over in ditches and places like that. Now there are some things that are not sponges that look that way, but there are freshwater sponges that live in the most amazing places. And I had decided I was going to do that until I hit the price tag on that science text, and I figured if I didn't have that science text, I wasn't going to have enough information to try to keep them alive. And I hemmed and hawed and tried to find it used someplace, but I couldn't. Ray's Fish Room, welcome to the stream. Hi guys, Dwayne, are you planning to go to the aquatic experience in my neck of town, New Jersey, this year in October? Ray, no, I am not. Traveling to Peru this year is pretty much going to shatter our budget, but I'm going to do it, and we'll just try to recover later on. I went to this last aquatic experience because I knew that it was moving to New Jersey for a while, and I wanted to catch it and mostly the people. You know, there were so many YouTubers there, and I had a great time connecting with all the YouTubers and seeing the exhibits and the yeah, Bob, I think that may be the problem with keeping sponges alive in aquariums, is that aquariums are a closed system and they may not have enough of the food sources that sponges use in them. And that's why I wanted that textbook, was to see if I could figure out how to feed sponges in such a way that they would survive in an aquarium. You know, little freshwater ditches, drainage ditches, they don't have a lot of water flow, but when it rains real heavy, they get a lot of water in them and through them. And those were some of the places I was noticing them up at the local university we have here. In the ditches, we were working up there. I was painting up there, and I noticed them. I finally found my shirt. This is the shirt that I should have worn to Aquatic Experience. I don't know if you guys can see it. I'm going to try to show you what's on the back of it. It's got Bullwinkle on the front. And it says, "Greetings, taco lovers," on the back. And I wanted to wear that to AE and show Corey. I'm sure he would be jealous. G Bear, welcome to the stream. Like I said, mainly I like to talk about water. Oh, there was one thing I missed. Bob, you've been keeping freshwater fish for 55 years. I'm 63. I've been keeping them for the better part of 45 years. Now, it's off and on. I've had some dry spells, but it's good to have someone of your age here, Bob. And I'm glad you're still going strong. My wife finally got, I had about 750 gallons of tanks in the house. This house, at one point, there was at least 2 tanks in every room. And about 7 years ago, my wife said, "You're not really keeping a whole lot of fish in all these tanks. I need you to get some of them out of the house, or all of them out of the house. It's time to have the house not have tanks in every room." So I went dry for about 4 or 5 years. And the last fish that I got before I went dry was an L260, Queen Arabesque, Pleco, Loricard. And I put it in a tank and it disappeared and I never saw it again. But I kept thinking about that fish the whole time I was dry, and I kept a 110-gallon Oceanic and several 55s when I donated my tanks to the local fish club, and so I started thinking about that L260 again. And I decided that I wanted to put them in the 110, to reset up the 110. And I talked to my wife about it, and of course, you know, it needs to be a joint decision when one goes back into the fish keeping hobby, because it's a pretty expensive hobby. And that's what you're looking at in the background here, is this 110-gallon Oceanic, and you're seeing some of the Teleocycla monogrammas that I got. I got them from Eric Bodrock, who is somebody that I would recommend everyone check out. He has great fish. He's a great fish keeper. He's one of the real experts in our hobby, he and his wife. And I would highly recommend to anyone that's looking for fish online to look up Eric Bodrock's sales link, and what's it called? All Oddball Aquatics. And this is a link that I would recommend that anyone that's looking for stranger or rarer fish, or even just really quality bred fish. Eric and his wife both do a lot of A54 Punchy. Welcome to the stream. Anyway, Eric, there are a number of really excellent fish experts that have local home businesses or local businesses where they sell fish online. And Tangled Up in Cichlids is another one that I would recommend. Um, he's got some great stuff. Um, uh, Greg Sage, Gary Wang. There's any number of excellent people. Ted Judy used to sell a bunch of his pistos and smaller fish. Bob says he's 62 here, started with a 5-gallon at the age of 7. A pair of pink convicts from Woolworths. Yep, I've been down that convict road before. Of course, they spawned a million babies. Mom made me take them back to Woolworths. Only allowed egg layers. Yeah, convicts will break you of raising fry pretty quick. In this day and age, you might be able to sell those pink ones, though. I haven't seen too many of those pink convicts lately. But yeah, I remember those myself. And of course, they were one of my early cichlids too. That was my early fish tanking love. You're talking about Variatus. I would recommend Chef Cooper to talk to about Variatus. I would recommend, what is it, Hardcore Cichlids, which is a guy online, and his name is, I'm not picking up his name right now. Who else was it? Talk to Charles. Charles is another one of the Fish Fam members, and I think he's got a couple of Variatus now. Maybe one of my mods can put a link to Charles's web page. I can't remember whether it's Charles Fish Tanks or what Charles' handle is right now, but Charles is a young kid, but I seem to remember him having some Variatus that he got. I may be wrong on that, but I seem to remember that. Now he's all over the been all over the Northeast here lately because he goes to school in some of those colleges, and he also interns during the summers there. But Charles is a young man that has a really good grasp on this hobby, and I would recommend him. I think he's the one that I remember that had some Variatus. Aquarium Cop says he misses having strawberry ice cream at Woolworths and then picking out a fish on Sunday. Yep. Back in the day, Woolworths was the real 5 and dime store. They've kind of come down in the world a little bit, but back in the day, they were there were a lot of things that you could buy for a nickel or a dime in Woolworths. Hey Joel, welcome to the stream, man. How's Joel doing on a Saturday? But Bob, that cheers me up that someone that's my age is still in the hobby as well. I didn't start quite that early. My first cross with, I mean, I kept turtles and stuff like that when I was a kid, but I never kept fish, tropical fish. You know, I may have caught little fish in the stream and kept them, but I really wasn't fish keeping. But in college, when I got to college, one of one of the people in one of my classes that lived in a dorm said he was going home for the summer and wanted me to keep his fish tank for him because I was renting an apartment. I lived there in Knoxville, and he was going home for the summer and wanted me to keep his fish tank. And I got a bunch of rosy barbs and I can't remember what kind of, I think it was head and tail light tetras. And of course that was in the early 70s. And the guy never came back. He never came back to school. I never heard from him again. So I ended up with a 20-gallon tank and a bunch of fish that I really had no idea how to take care of. But once I started looking around, I went and bought a book. Hey, 54 Punchy. I'm glad to have all of us hoary old people in the chat together. Us guys need a place to hang out. 54 Punchy says he's 62 as well. I guess something about that year that got a lot of us involved in fish keeping. Fish keeping was pretty exotic back in the day. There weren't that many people that did it. It was fraught with errors. Hey Joseph, welcome to the stream, man. Joseph, do you keep variatus? I was trying to remember somebody whose videos I watch. I think it's Charles Fish Tanks that keeps variatus, or got some variatus lately. I think Chef Cooper may have some too. I was watching one of his videos today and I don't remember seeing them, but it was a strange video. Yeah, do you have Charles' link for Bob Kaler? Joseph, please. I know we have kind of skipped around on you and I talking about what we're going to do when we're both sitting for 17 hours in Lima, Peru this summer. I would really like to get a chance to take my camera out and get shots of the local color and shots of the mountains when the sun's going down or when the sun's coming up or in the daylight. I think we're going to have, I think it's like noon that our plane flies to Puerto Maldonado. And for those that are unaware, JH Aquatics is Fish Fam News. Joseph, I definitely recommend you checking out his channel. He is going to go with us to Peru. Yeah, well, Joseph, we're not going to get a lot of nature stuff in Lima. Lima's going to be a city pretty much like any other city in the world. Yeah, that's my issue. And I was really hesitant about taking my camera bag with me and going out. I think I may put my camera bag in a locker and just get 1 or 2 lenses and a really good strap on my camera. And if there's 2 of us, if you and I both go together shooting, then I think that we'll be able to watch each other's back closely enough to keep anybody from approaching us that looks like they might be, coming for a snatch and grab or a pickpocket or something like that. 2 of us together would be more, a lot of would-be robbers or purse snatchers would probably be more likely to avoid 2 of us together, especially if we're both looking around like we think we're going to get robbed and we don't want to get robbed. we could leave our wallets in the lockers so they couldn't snatch that. Maybe, I mean, I don't know how you're going to do it, Joseph, but I assume that someplace in the airport we'll be able to get some local Peruvian currency, and I think about that. Joel's worried about me taking on robbers. Joel, I'm pretty old. I don't have near the left hook that I used to have, but anybody that doesn't know me and doesn't understand how hard I work to get the camera and the few lenses that I have collected and how important they are to me. No, I'm not a southpaw, but I've got a pretty good left hook. Joseph's not going to be able to run. What'd you do? Break a leg, Joseph? Anyway, I just feel like if we go light, if we don't offer them a lot to snatch and run, and obviously don't have a bunch of money on us, yeah, well, I'm a little cray-cray too, Joel. Yeah, I need to exercise too. I've been starting to walk my dogs longer and longer, trying to get myself in enough shape to go wandering, because we're going to do a lot of exercise. Yeah. Well, if one of them's running at me and I turn on him and swing, I might connect. Let him run into my fist. And I'm highly likely to do that as a first reaction, as opposed to saying, oh, hey, how you doing? I'm likely to swing on someone that runs up from behind on me because I'm expecting it. Joseph, I don't know exactly. I know that that in the past, Michael Barber has talked about there being a 3-day trip that we take in this 8-day grouping, where we go out a day and a half and camp and come back a day and a half. And I don't know whether that's a hiking or whether it's on the boat. Joel says we should do what he did in Southeast Asia and carry a fake set of wallet and crap watch, crap phone, which you just throw at them and run if trouble starts. Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the stream, man. I've been trying to get you to come on our Peru trip, Jeremy. I've been trying to think of a way. It's getting kind of late in the game to get signed up, but man, I'd love to have you there. I think you'd have a heck of a time too. So what was I talking about? I was talking about water. All of these live streams seem to get further and further and further away from the topic of water itself. Yeah, I wish you could too, Jeremy. You'll be there with us in spirit, my man. And I'm planning on filming so much stuff that you're basically going to be there in film too. Corridora and Epistos. That's what Joseph's after. I know that we're going to find, I think that we're going to find, hey Valley Fish, welcome to the stream. Joseph, I think that we're going to find some Corridoras. Yeah, well, Joseph, there is a way to get your cell phone to become a Wi-Fi hotspot. So it is possible. I don't think we're going to see any pink dolphins. We're going to be much further south and much closer to the mountains than the northern part of Peru, where there are a lot of warm water rivers and streams. So we're not going to get the kind of fish that you would get, you know, in the surrounding countries, more in the flatlands, and yeah, it's higher elevation. We're a bus ride away from Machu Picchu, is where this place actually is. Puerto Maldonado is the place that everybody goes to get a bus ride west to to Machu Picchu, which is very high up in the mountains. So basically, Lima is on the western side of the mountains in southern Peru, and Puerto Maldonado is on the eastern side of the mountains in southern Peru. There is flat land where the fish camp is. The water has come far enough down. Yeah, I was thinking about that too. We've talked to Chaz several times about it, and he keeps threatening to show up at the fish camp. But I think his school stuff has him so busy he can't really get away for something like that. But that would be awesome to have Chaz show up. I'm sure he'd be the life of the party. But Chaz lives much further north and more towards the central area of Peru. That's where he's going to school at. So I don't think we'll see him. It's not like it's a, you know, jump in the car and drive 2 hours thing. Yeah, I look forward to meeting Dean too. The whole Dean thing I feel like I've gotten off on a bad foot with him because of me talking about the need to plop and drop those fish that he got in from Peru. I really hate seeing how badly the water affects the fish that are being shipped in from Peru. It bothers me that we may have trouble with our fish just like he did. You know, if they put 4 or 5 of them together in a bag, then it's very likely that one will die and trash the water and make it so poisonous to the rest of the fish. It's really not poisonous until you open the bag and let new air in. But as soon as that oxygen hits that water, the water is going to go foul immediately. And I know he was trying to acclimatize some of those fish, and I just kept screaming at the screen, plop and drop, plop and drop, plop and drop, because that's the only way I can think of to avoid that potential poisoning of that bad water. And of course, I said something on Corey's video, and that seemed to create a lot of tension. You know, I was saying something negative, and my intention was not to say something negative as much as it was to inform other people, of course, based on my opinion alone, but to inform other people that when they get wild-caught fish in from another country, while acclimation is an important thing and is very critical for some fish, the truth is, as long as the water isn't hugely different from the water they came out of, you know, anything within 100 TDS, I am firmly in the belief category of plopping and dropping those fish to get them out of that poisonous water and to get them into water that is at least clean. The fish will have a better shot adjusting to a different TDS than they will surviving bad water. Yeah, I know, Jeremy, and I agree wholeheartedly that coming from a shipper in the United States, the water TDS is going to be much closer, probably. But my experience watching that video with Dean unboxing and tanking all those fish was that the ones that he plopped and dropped did better than the ones that he tried to acclimatize, because he was acclimatizing them so quickly, just dumping cups of water in there, instead of a drip method, which is, to really acclimatize a fish, it needs to take several hours or a day to go from one water to another water. And those fish were in such bad shape coming out of those bags, because of the shipping, because of the pH and the TDS of the water in Peru is so drastically different from what that's why a lot of angels that are shipped in wild caught have such a hard time surviving, is because the pH is so acidic in the water where they come from, and the TDS is so low that there are not the same pathogens in that water as there are in water that's just marginally higher in TDS and even near basic or neutral on pH. Suddenly there is a whole new wave of pathogens to hit those fish that they have never dealt with in their lives, that their genetics are not developed, they're resistant to all these new pathogens that survive in neutral water but not highly acidic water. And that's the reason why it's so hard to take fish from the wild in an area where the TDS is so low and the pH is so low, that you suddenly are trying to not only acclimatize them to a different kind of water, but you're trying to acclimatize them to a whole new array of diseases and pathogens that simply could not survive in their native waters, that were so tannic, so acidic, and such a low pH. Now, a caveat to that is that where we're going to be going, the water is still pretty much just out of the mountains. So the TDS may be a little higher and the pH may be a little more towards neutral, because it hasn't had time to really, get full of tannins from all the leaf litter and wood in the rivers. It hasn't had a chance to spread out into a wild river yet. It's basically streams, and although the Rio Madre Dios, the Mother of God River, I think is the actual translation. Hey, King Lee, welcome to the stream, man. How's King Lee doing on a fine Saturday afternoon? Anyway, for Corey and for Dean, who live in an area that has such low TDS in their water, and I'm sure the pH is near 7 just because of a local water company treating it. They have a better chance of plopping and dropping than those of us who live on the Cambian Shield, i.e. Jeremy and I, where there is so much calcium in the water to begin with that our TDS is going to be even run through a water treatment plant, our TDS is going to be in the 200s, if not 300s. And so it's much harder for us to acclimatize and plop and drop fish unless they've been in water that's similar to our local area. So it's going to be harder for me. Hey, Corona Ken, welcome to the stream, man. I just hope I didn't get off on the wrong foot with Dean, because I added to the tension on Corey's video by saying something that was construed as negative. But if you listen to that video closely, you can hear Corey say, plop and drop, just like I was saying. So I don't know how I was adding that much tension, but I know that all my comments got deleted. Jeremy, I agree. Unfortunately, the problem is that if you've got a bag of fish from Peru or from Brazil that come in and 2 of them are already dead, the moment you open that bag, those fish are going to be near death instantly because of the drastic change in the parameters of the water. And that was happening time and time again to Dean in that video. There was 1 or 2 dead fish in almost every bag. And 1 or 2 dead fish over a matter of hours in water that is very similar to our own can be ameliorated by adding them straight to a tank that is close enough. When I went to Jim's house and I got all those rainbows from him and all the other fish in tanks, I was only 6.5 hours away from home, and I drove like a bat out of hell bringing those fish home because we could only find 5 bags, and I knew that they were overstocked in the bags that they were in, but they were big bags. But anyway, when I got those fish in the house and out of the containers they were in, I realized that I had already lost one of the very large Bellerai rainbows and one of the other. Yeah, you're right, Jeremy. Dean was in a very tough spot. I agree wholeheartedly. But anyway, rather than acclimatize those rainbows, because I knew they had been in the bag for 6 hours, overcrowded, I plopped and dropped them, and the fish did fine. And I know that there are very many excellent fish keepers on the web that say to avoid acclimatizing your fish, which is something I firmly believe in. But there are many expert fish keepers that will tell you not to acclimatize, that you're better off plopping and dropping to get them out of the water they're in and into fresh, aerated, clean water, even if the parameters are a lot different. You know, this is an argument. Joel says he always half-ass acclimates them. So far, so good. On a related note, what are your thoughts on dropping the tank temperatures during water changes? Joel, I have always been a fan, ever since I've been keeping large cichlids, South American and Central American cichlids. I have always known that one of the best ways to kick off spawning in a pair that you have prepped for spawning by feeding them a lot of really good food, you know, perfect food for them, rich food for them. Then they get fat. The females start to put on that egg weight. The best way to kick off breeding in a lot of fish like that is a very heavy, cold water change. And why would that work? Because you're actually making it rain in their tank. And rainwater is almost always cooler than lake water or river water. So basically you are doing the same thing that happens in the wild. They have hit the wet season. There's going to be a lot of food around for fry to eat. There is going to be a lot of disturbance in the water. Water is going to be kicked up because the water level is going to be up. And fish naturally breed in those time periods. And when it rains all day and all night, it drops the temperature of the water in the lake or the river simply based on the rain passing through the air and giving off heat. Upon hitting the water, it is cooler. Upon building up in the water river flow, it cools down the river, and it's very slightly. Over a vast amount of water, a ton of water that is cooler will only slightly affect the temperature in a wild situation. But many cichlids, many tetras recognize that as the time to breed. The water's warm. All of a sudden there's a lot of rain and a lot of disturbance in the water, and it is cooler. That will kick off breeding. You can also throw floating plants in the tank at the same time. This adds to the whole idea of the rain and storms knocking leaves and plant branches into the water, all of which might contain insects that the breeding parents recognize as food for both themselves and their fry. And so it is much more likely for them to start breeding. So I wouldn't recommend dropping 10 degrees. You're going to kill your fish. But if the water drops in that kind of manner, in a 3 to 4 degree manner, it's not going to hurt your fish that time. You know, do a 50% water change. If the water in your tank is 80 degrees, then make sure the water you're putting in is 75, 76. Splash it all around the tank when you add the water in, and basically Joel, that's perfect. 3 degrees is enough for the fish to experience it as a real rain. And for the ones that are ready to breed, to kick off breeding, I mean, there's a million different things that kick off breeding. Some fish have to go through a dry season where the water quality really drops, and then the rain hits. In other words, you let the water. Hey, Val's, welcome to the stream, man. Same old. How's it going for you on a Saturday? Anyway, one of the biggest barriers for fish keepers over the last 30 or 40 years has been how to breed these fish. And following the natural order of things, a 2-month period, 7 a.m., you better go back to bed, man. I can't believe you make any of my streams. Unless you're up early for church. Fish keepers have had to work extra hard and think way outside the box to figure out why certain fish pairs that are obviously in breeding condition and are showing signs of breeding behavior don't spawn, don't lay eggs, don't drop babies in the tank itself. And it is often something that is so simple that we just miss it. There are many species of apistos and many species of smaller cichlids that require the exact proper size of pebbles to be around them for them to go through their breeding behavior and to actually breed. If they don't have the right size pebbles, they won't breed. So there are many and varied things which make it impossible to breed certain fish unless you add the exact thing that they need. In some cases, it is a 2-month dry season where you let the water quality and evaporation occur in your tank until your tank drops down 7 or 8 inches and the quality of the water becomes worse, and then suddenly do a minor water change, because if you suddenly do a super big one, you might kill your fish. But do a 20% water change, and then do another 20% water change, and after about a week, do a 50% water change with water that is cooler than the water in the tank, just like Joel was talking about. And and then feed heavily, and you have created a dry season and going into a wet season. It really helps if you do that when the barometric pressure drops, in the sense of a large thunderstorm coming your way. Fish sense that barometric drop. So if they're sensing a barometric drop and it's been the dry season all along, and suddenly they feel that barometric drop and a water change comes in to simulate rain, and then another water change comes in to simulate rain, and then a large water change comes in, all connected to barometric fronts. You have used nature in your aquarium to set up the conditions to make some fish breed. Jack Dempsey's were a beginner's fish and were very easy to breed for most people. I decided I was going to start line breeding Jack Dempsey's and trying to get a variant, and I had a devil of a time getting pairs to they would pair off, but they wouldn't lay eggs, and they wouldn't fertilize those eggs until I started doing exactly what I was talking about, to have a dry season where the water quality and level dropped, then slowly work it back up through barometric change water changes that were connected to a storm front coming into the area, so that the fish felt that barometric change, recognized that it was going to rain, and then got that rain through a water change. And then by throwing floating plants, you could just throw any plant at all, any tree that you know of that's safe. You could throw leaves in the tank, anything that's suddenly on the surface, which makes them think that the river has had a bunch of storm broken leaves and branches and trees dropped into it. All of those things gave me a method to get my Dempseys to breed like they would in nature. It was very natural for them to breed. Of course, you have to do your conditioning. You have to get the fish in the proper shape so that they're ready to breed. You have to have a pair, of course. They're not going to pair off until they're ready, and that's always a difficult thing. But I just feel like that water is something that we need to, as fish keepers, really focus on. It is the one way that we can affect how well our fish thrive. It is the one way that we can give them the proper conditions. And you just have to think outside the box some for so that you are literally being the fish. You know, species after new species is finally bred in home aquarium because fish keepers, experts, or just hobbyists accidentally do something, accidentally think outside the box and try something different, make some mistake, what is considered a mistake, and suddenly those fish are breeding, and that is how the hobby advances. You know, it's thinking outside the box. It's being concerned with being the fish and water quality that advance our hobby in the breeding areas by people that either do it by mistake or do it by thought process, but they are focusing on the water in many cases, whether they know it or not. Okay, guys, I appreciate you spending some of your Saturday afternoon with me. I hope we've covered some topic that's given you some modicum of information to go by. Hey, Lecter Records, welcome back to the stream, man. I haven't seen you in a while, but you're chiming in at the very end. Not a problem, Joel. Thank you for giving me a topic to ramble on. Laura, thank you. And I wish you guys a great rest of the weekend. I'm going to try my best to come up with some content. I'm finally past the nightmare of taxes, which has been a month-long nightmare for my wife and I this year. And I'm slightly recovering from that. So hopefully I'll be putting out some actual content for you guys. Thank you, Bob. I especially appreciate you and 54 Punchy as 60-year-olds with me. See you, Vals. Thanks for dropping by. You guys have a good week. Have a good weekend. Catch you on the flip side.